The lion cub sat motionless in the dirt, his empty eye sockets covered in flies, his breathing so shallow you could barely see his ribs move. He'd given up. Anyone could see it. He wasn't fighting anymore, wasn't crying, wasn't even trying to find his mother. Just sitting there, waiting to die. Naledi stopped dead when she saw him. She was walking back from the river with a water jug balanced on her head when the cub came into view, maybe 8 weeks old, golden fur matted with dirt and blood, sitting perfectly still like a small statue of defeat. But it was his face that made Naledi's heart shatter. Where his eyes should have been were just scarred, empty sockets. Something had taken his eyes, disease, infection, maybe an attack. And without eyes, a lion cub in the wild had zero chance of survival. "Oh, little one," Naledi whispered in Setswana, kneeling slowly. "What happened to you?" The cub's ears twitched at her voice. His head turned slightly toward the sound, but he didn't run. Didn't even try. He'd already decided he was going to die here, so what did it matter if a human was close? Naledi set down her water jug and moved closer. The cub made no attempt to escape. She could see he was starving, his spine visible through his skin, his legs trembling from weakness. "Where's your mother, baby?" But Naledi already knew the answer. No mother would abandon a cub unless she couldn't find him. And a blind cub who couldn't call out, couldn't follow sounds properly, couldn't keep up with the pride? He'd gotten separated and lost, and now he was just waiting for the end. Naledi made a decision that would make her entire Botswana village think she'd lost her mind. She scooped the blind cub into her arms. He was so weak he barely reacted. Just hung there limply, having accepted whatever fate was coming. "Not today, little warrior," Naledi said firmly. "You don't get to give up. Not on my watch." She carried him back to her village, the cub's small body pressed against her chest. By the time she reached her hut, word had already spread. A crowd was gathering, faces showing shock, fear, and confusion. Her husband, Kagiso, came running. "Naledi, what are you? Is that a lion cub?" "He's blind. Starving. Dying." "Then let nature take its course." "Nature already decided he should die," Naledi shot back. "I'm deciding something different." Her mother-in-law, Mama Kafilwi, pushed through the crowd. At 76, she was one of the village's most respected elders. She looked at the cub, then at Naledi, then back at the cub. "The cub is blind?" "Yes, Mama." "And you want to save him?" "I have to try." Mama Kafilwi was quiet for a long moment. "When I was a girl, there was a healer in the next village who saved a blind jackal pup. Everyone said it was impossible, that the pup would never survive. But that healer taught the pup to live without eyes. The jackal lived for 7 years. She looked at Naledi intently. "Do you have that kind of patience? That kind of commitment?" "I don't know, Mama. But I know I can't let him die without trying." Mama Kafilwi nodded slowly. "Then try. But understand, if you save his life, you become responsible for his life. A blind lion cannot be released back to the wild. He'll be yours to care for. Are you prepared for that?" Naledi looked down at the cub in her arms. He'd tucked his head against her chest, maybe feeling warmth for the first time in days, maybe just too weak to hold it up anymore. "Yes," Naledi said. "I'm prepared." Before we continue, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let me tell you what happened next, because what this woman did was absolutely extraordinary. The first 48 hours were critical. The cub was so weak he couldn't even lap water. Naledi had to give him fluids drop by drop, using a cloth soaked in water that she squeezed into his mouth. She made a mixture of goat's milk, mashed meat, and egg, nutrients a growing cub needed, and fed it to him with her fingers, tiny amounts at a time. The cub had no strength to resist, no energy to even chew properly. Naledi would put food in his mouth, then massage his throat to encourage swallowing. "Come on, baby. Swallow. You can do this." It took 3 hours to get down what should have been 10 minutes of eating. But the cub kept swallowing, kept fighting, even if only barely. Kagiso watched from the doorway, his anger fading into something like reluctant admiration. "You really think you can save him?" I'm going to try every single day until either he gets stronger or... Naledi didn't finish the sentence. On the third day, the cub lifted his head on his own for the first time. On the fourth day, he made a sound, a tiny, weak meow that was the first sign of personality, of will to live. "There you are," Naledi whispered, tears in her eyes. "There's my fighter." She named him Les Edi, light, in Setswana, because even though he lived in darkness, she wanted him to know there was light in the world. But feeding him was just the beginning. The real challenge was teaching a blind cub how to live. Naledi had no blueprint, no guide. She had to figure it out as she went, learning what worked and what didn't through pure trial and error. She discovered that Les Edi responded powerfully to sound. So she started making specific sounds for different things. Clicking her tongue meant food, a soft whistle meant water, humming meant it was time to sleep. She created a safe space for him in her hut, always keeping furniture in the exact same positions so he could learn the layout. When he bumped into something, she'd guide his paw to touch it, letting him memorize its location. "You have to build a map in your mind," she told him, even though he couldn't understand her words. "Your nose and ears are your new eyes." The village children would gather outside Naledi's hut, watching through the window as she worked with Les Edi. Some thought she was crazy. Others thought she was performing some kind of miracle. By week 3, Les Edi was walking, slowly, carefully, but walking. He'd memorized the layout of Naledi's hut and could navigate it without bumping into things. By week 5, he started playing. He'd pounce at sounds, bat at things that made noise, wrestle with rolled-up cloths that Naledi would drag across the floor for him. He was becoming a lion again, not a dying animal waiting for the end, but a cub with personality, curiosity, and spirit. But the breakthrough moment came in month 3. Naledi was outside preparing food when Les Edi, now about 5 months old and roughly the size of a large dog, came wandering out of the hut. This was the first time he'd ventured outside on his own. He stopped at the doorway, his head swiveling as he tried to understand this new environment through sound and smell. The outside world was overwhelming: birds, wind, other animals, people talking. Naledi held her breath, wanting to help him but knowing he needed to figure this out himself. Les Edi took one cautious step forward. Then another. His paw found the edge of the step down from the door. He tested it carefully, then successfully navigated down. He was mapping new territory on his own. "Good boy." Naledi couldn't help calling out. Lasidi's ears swiveled toward her voice. He chirped, the greeting sound lions make to family, and walked directly toward her, his path surprisingly straight. He'd learned to navigate by sound. Her voice was his lighthouse. The village chief, Kosi Mathusi, came to visit that afternoon. He watched as Les Edi played outside, pouncing at sounds, wrestling with Naledi's young son Tabo, navigating around obstacles with increasing confidence. "I didn't think it was possible," Kosi Mathusi admitted. "A blind lion learning to live. But you've done it, Naledi. You've actually done it." "He did it," Naledi corrected. "I just refuse to let him give up." "What happens when he grows larger? When he becomes an adult male weighing 200 kilograms? He can't live in your hut forever." "I know. I've been thinking about that." Naledi had already been in contact with the Botswana Department of Wildlife. An officer named Larato had visited twice, documenting Lasidi's progress with photographs and videos. "There's a wildlife sanctuary 2 hours from here," Larato had explained. "They specialize in animals that can't survive in the wild. I spoke to the director. They're willing to take Les Edi when he gets older, but..." She'd paused, smiling. "They want to hire you." "Hire me? You've accomplished something incredible. You've taught a blind lion to navigate, to play, to live. The sanctuary has other animals with disabilities, blind, deaf, missing limbs. They need someone who understands how to work with them, how to give them quality of life even though they can't be wild." Now, 3 months later, the offer was still on the table, and Naledi was seriously considering it. But first, she wanted Les Edi to experience something no one thought a blind lion could do. She wanted to teach him to hunt. Not real hunting, he'd never be able to do that. But the play hunting that cubs do, the pouncing and stalking that was part of his natural instinct. Naledi created toys that made noise, rattles inside cloth balls, bells attached to rolled leather. She dragged them across the ground, making sounds, and Les Eddie would stalk the noise, his body lowering into a hunting crouch, his ears tracking the sound's movement. Then he'd pounce, not always accurately, but with increasing precision as he learned to judge distance by sound. The first time he successfully pounced directly onto a moving toy, the village children who were watching erupted in cheers. Les Eddie, startled by the sudden noise, froze. Then, realizing he'd succeeded at something, he let out a roar, small and high-pitched for a 6-month-old, but unmistakably proud. "He knows he did well," Tabo whispered in awe. "He knows he accomplished something." Naledi wiped tears from her eyes. This was why she'd fought so hard. Not just to keep Les Eddie alive, but to give him a life worth living. A life where he could play, learn, accomplish things, feel pride. When Les Eddie was 8 months old, Naledi made the difficult decision to transition him to the sanctuary. He was getting too big, too strong. Playing with him now sometimes resulted in accidental scratches from claws he didn't fully know how to control. But she didn't just drop him off. She took the job offer. She would work at the sanctuary 3 days a week, helping other disabled animals while also making sure Lecidi's transition was smooth. The sanctuary created a special enclosure for Les Eddie, designed specifically for a blind lion. Everything was carefully planned, textured paths that led to different areas, water sources that made specific sounds, feeding stations that released scents he could track. And most importantly, Naledi was there 3 days a week, her voice the constant in his world of darkness, the anchor he could always find. The sanctuary director, Dr. Kumo, was amazed at Lecidi's abilities. He navigates better than some sighted animals. The spatial memory, the sound mapping, it's extraordinary. He's extraordinary because he never gave up, Naledi said. Even when he was ready to die, something in him kept fighting. I just gave him a reason to keep fighting. 2 years later, Les Eddie was fully grown, a magnificent adult male lion weighing nearly 180 kilograms. His mane was thick and full. His body was powerful and healthy. He lived in an enclosure with 2 other lions, an elderly male with a missing leg and a female who was deaf. The 3 of them had formed an unusual pride, each helping the others with their different abilities and challenges. And twice a week, when Naledi came to work, Les Eddie would hear her voice from across the enclosure and come running, a blind 200-kilogram lion charging at full speed toward the sound he trusted more than anything else in the world. Staff members would gasp, first-time visitors would scream, thinking they were about to witness a tragedy. But Les Eddie would stop exactly at the fence, pressing his massive head against it, chuffing in greeting. And Naledi would place her hand on the other side, touching her blind lion, the one she'd refused to let die. "Hello, my Les Eddie. Yes, I'm here. I'll always be here." Scientists came from around the world to study Les Eddie, the blind lion who had learned to navigate, to play, to live a full life despite his disability. Papers were published. Documentaries were filmed. But for Naledi, it was simpler. "I saw a baby who'd given up. And I decided he didn't get to make that choice." Sometimes animals need someone to believe in them until they can believe in themselves again. Today, Les Eddie is 5 years old. He's taught the sanctuary staff more about animal cognition, adaptation, and resilience than any textbook could. He's become an ambassador for disabled animals everywhere, proof that quality of life doesn't require perfect health. And he's taught Naledi something too. She went on to help 17 other disabled animals, a one-eyed leopard, a deaf hyena, a cheetah with a paralyzed back leg. Each time, she used the same principles: patience, consistency, and absolute refusal to accept that disability means a life isn't worth living. If this story moved you, share it. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever refused to give up on someone or something everyone else had written off? Hit like and subscribe for more stories proving that disability doesn't mean inability, that the strongest force is someone who refuses to accept defeat, and that sometimes the smallest creatures teach us the biggest lessons about never giving up. Because somewhere in Botswana, a blind lion lives a full, happy life, playing, exploring, being a lion in every way that matters. All because one tribal woman looked at a dying cub who'd given up and said, "Not today. You don't get to quit. I'm going to fight for you until you remember how to fight for yourself." Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is refuse to accept someone else's surrender. Sometimes teaching means learning together. And sometimes the most unexpected miracles happen when we choose to see possibility where everyone else sees only impossibility.